For today's video, I'm going to be looking at another player comparison in the NBA. A few weeks ago, I made my first player comparison analysis video, and I plan to do a few more on the channel, but I made a video a few weeks ago on the Jokic versus Embiid comparison, which is probably the most interesting comparison in the NBA right now. If you haven't already watched that, definitely be sure to check that out as well. But today, I'm going to be doing another player comparison, which is, again, one of the most interesting in the NBA right now, and it's between who I think are the second and third best point guards in the league right now, and Luka, Doncic, and Damian Lillard. So I'm going to go through a lot of analysis and really go deep into it and try to determine who is the best point guard between those two. It's two guys that are right on the cusp of being top 10 players in the NBA right now, and are both having incredible seasons and doing what they do best. So I'm going to look at a comparison between them, and at the end of the video, as I did with the Jokic and Embiid one as well, I'll reveal who I think is better right now between the two. Before we start, if you haven't already, definitely be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers on the channel by the summer, and it would be great if you guys could subscribe to help me reach that goal. And also, I post pretty much NBA content twice a week, so you don't want to miss out on that either. With that being said, let's get started with the comparison now. So as I did with the Jokic and Embiid video too, I'm going to start off by talking about these players' basic stats and mostly trying to determine who is the better offensive player, and then I'll talk about defense, and then another thing that's very important in this debate is their contribution to winning. So first of all, looking at some basic stats here and the offensive side of the game, let's look at Luka Doncic. He's averaging 28.6 points per game this season, along with 8 rebounds and 9 assists. He's a very, very good overall player and is very efficient too, shooting 48.7% from the field this season, 37.6% from 3, now only 74% from the free throw line, but still has a 56% effective field goal percentage and 60% true shooting percentage. Now, Luka hasn't always been that efficient of a scorer, but he's improved on that this year, and it's something that's being a little bit overlooked since, because of his slow start to the season, people have been not talking about Luka as one of the very top tier players in the league right now, but we still should be considering him as one since he's averaging these insane stats. His scoring game is obviously very complete, and if it's better than Dame's, I'm not sure. We'll look at that a little bit later, and it's a very, very important part of this debate. But we know that Luka can score at all 3 levels of the game, has a very lethal step back, and has been shooting very efficiently from 3 this season as well, as I mentioned, and is also one of the best playmakers in the NBA. He's very good off ball on offense, and he's obviously a very good passer, always finds the open man, and because of it is averaging 9 assists this season. He's also averaging 1 steal per game and 0.6 blocks. Like I mentioned, I'm going to be getting into defensive stats and who's the better overall defender a little bit later, especially using the eye test there as well. And that's really the main thing that you have to factor into defense. But in terms of Luka Doncic offensively, we have to keep in mind how he's almost averaging a 30-point triple-double, is a very good playmaker and rebounder, averaging 8 rebounds per game this season, as I mentioned. We've got to factor that in. It's very important. And like I said, he's being more efficient than he was last season, and we have to keep that in mind in this debate. And really just overall, Luka is one of the best scorers in the league, can score at all 3 levels, and as I mentioned, has that very lethal step back 3, is very good in isolation, and is more efficient than you think. So now looking at Damian Lillard and his basic stats this season, he's really having an MVP type of season. I guess both of these guys are kind of in the MVP conversation this year, having obviously great years and staying relatively healthy as well. Damian Lillard this season is averaging 30 points, which is obviously incredible. One of the best scorers in the league, in my opinion. He's top 5 in the league when it comes to scoring, and I'll go a little bit more in depth with that a little bit later on here very shortly. And when we look at the rest of Damian Lillard's basic stats, he's averaging only 4.3 rebounds per game. I mean, it's not really that important when we're talking about a player comparison, but it is pretty important towards the game of basketball and actually contributing to your team. Luka's averaging a little bit more rebounds. A lot of that is because of his height, size, and how he gets a lot of defensive rebounds uncontested as well. So it's a little thing that we have to factor in. Also, Damian Lillard is also averaging 8 assists. He's a very underrated playmaker as well. We often don't talk about this part of his game. So he's averaging 8 assists. Luka, as I mentioned, is averaging 9. We look at Damian Lillard's efficiency this season, shooting only 45% from the field and around 38% from 3. and he's also shooting 93.5% from the free throw line this season to Luka's 74%. And again, it's a very small thing, but it is very important to take advantage of your opportunities at the line, along with hitting them down the stretch in the clutch. And that's also something that Damian Lillard does get the edge here. He is the more clutch player than Luka Doncic. He plays better in the clutch moments and deep in the fourth quarter in very close games, and that's definitely something we have to factor in as well to such a close comparison here between two guys that are maybe considered top 10 players. He's shooting 55% as an effective field goal percentage and has 62.5% true shooting, a little bit higher than Luka. There is averaging also 1 steal per game and 0.3 blocks. So a few things I want to point out here as well is how both of these guys have very high degrees of difficulty when it comes to their shots. A lot of them take shots in isolation. We know that Damian Lillard has limitless range, takes and makes a lot of step back and sidestep threes in the clutch moments of games, and Luka Doncic also has a very high degree of difficulty when it comes to his shots as well, shooting a lot of contested step backs. And both of these guys, the fact that they have pretty efficient numbers on very tough shots like this is absolutely insane. We definitely have to factor this into this debate, and I do think that Damian Lillard has a little bit of a higher degree of difficulty when it comes to his shots, and they're both very efficient. Damian Lillard putting up 30 points per game as well, Luka Doncic around 29 points per game, but because of the degree of difficulty and things like Lillard's range and his clutch, I'm giving a slight edge to scoring to Damian Lillard. We look at playmaking, which is very similar as well, and overall just efficiency, and their offensive games are very close, and it's just such a tough decision to just look at their overall offensive games and try to decide who's better there. I'm going to give a very, very slight edge to Damian Lillard here, but it's extremely close, and we have to factor in other components of this debate as well. So let's look at defense here. Defense is something that I always factor in to comparisons and player rankings, and it's something that when it comes to Luka Doncic and Damian Lillard, we don't talk about their defensive games a lot. Let's start with Luka Doncic here. A lot of people don't consider him a very good defender, but I think his defense is actually pretty underrated. He's pretty versatile, can defend a lot of people on the court, does a pretty good job defending on ball. He does need a little bit more agility and athleticism to try to keep his man that he's guarding in front of him at all times, and he does need to be more aware when he's defending off the ball, and that's something that's going to come with time as he matures as an NBA player and gets more used to it, and also just gives more effort on the defensive end of the floor, especially when things aren't going his way. As I mentioned, he's going to continue to mature as a player, but as of right now, he's not a very good off-ball defender. He's pretty good on ball, and like I mentioned, he's versatile and can defend down low as well with his size, and I'd classify him as maybe an average defender, maybe a little bit under average on defense, but it's close, especially between him and Damian Lillard. I look at Dame's defensive game and pretty much just classify it as average. He really doesn't do anything that stands out on the defensive end of the floor, is a pretty good perimeter defender, and isn't versatile like Luka is, but again, I'd classify Dame around that average stage. So for defense, we'll really just call the tie between these two guys. There's really not that much more to analyze here, but as I mentioned, I do always factor in defense to these rankings, and this is where it stands with this one. Last thing I'm going to factor in here is these guys' contribution to winning, and this is very important in this debate. In terms of this season, it's pretty close. It's actually very close. The Blazers are the 6th seed right now in the Western Conference, while the Mavericks are the 7th seed, and I look at Damian Lillard as a guy that has really saved the Portland Trailblazers franchise over the last few years, has consistently led them to the playoffs and even led them to the Western Conference Final one season, and is really carrying the team on offense, and especially this season, they've been a really good team and one of the best in the Western Conference over a large portion of this season, and it's all because of his play and his dominant MVP type of season. I look at Luka Doncic and how the Mavs got off to a slow start this season, but are picking it up and are in the 7th seed in the Western Conference right now, and definitely will be looking to contend this season as well. He also has an extremely good impact. If he was not on the Mavericks right now, they'd be one of the worst in the league without a doubt, and both of these guys really contribute a lot to winning. So it's time for my final decision now, and who I think is the better player between Luka Doncic and Damian Lillard, and this is one of the closest comparisons in the NBA right now, and when you really look at it deeply like this, you really realize how close of a comparison it is. But I have to give a very, very slight edge to Damian Lillard, and offensively and defensively, these guys are pretty much equal, and when I look at something like contribution to winning, they're also very much equal there. And if I had to boil it down to one thing, it would probably be the clutch factor. Damian Lillard is one of the most clutch players in the league, and he has limitless range and always does his best when he's in the crunch time and the biggest moments of the game and the biggest moments of this season. And it's something that Luka Doncic hasn't necessarily done yet in his NBA career at the same level as Damian Lillard. And overall, I think Dame is just a very slightly better scorer than Luka. And really, I just have to have my final decision to this debate at the end of the season and see how the playoffs play out and everything like that. Just like I said with the Jokic and Embiid comparison, but right now, I'm going to give a very slight edge to Damian Lillard. So there you have it. That is the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching today. Be sure to comment down below who you think is the better player between Luka Doncic and Damian Lillard, and also let me know in the comments what player comparison I should do next, since this is going to be something that I continue to do on this channel since I enjoy doing them, and you guys seem to enjoy the first one as well, the Jokic and Embiid. We'll see how this one does as well, but I definitely plan on continuing these player comparisons, so comment down below which one I should do next. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new. As I mentioned, let's get that 1,000 subscribers by the summer, and I'll see you guys next video.